cold smoking for like about 15 years, and I just wanted to go over the different techniques and things. I also write quite a bit about it on my blog, Eat Cured Meat, so I just wanted to demystify some of it. A lot of the cold smoking I'm doing with these types of things, we'll get in the equipment. I just want to go over the basics of it first. What is cold smoking? Cold smoking is done under 86 degrees Fahrenheit or 30 degrees Celsius. So I believe that fish, for instance, slowly starts cooking over that temperature. Keeping it a low temperature means, well, the smoke's going into it, but for a cured meat, it's drying it. Cured things, obviously cold smoking, that's generally what they're connected to. So why would you want to cold smoke? You can cold smoke things, and I've played around with salt, chocolate. I haven't done spices yet, but vegetables, beetroot, mushrooms, and generally even under an hour. Aubergine, eggplant, under an hour is enough, and you can get some smoke flavor without it being overpowering. So if you've got a steak and then you want to cold smoke it, you could just dry it out a bit in the fridge and give it 1 or 2 hours, and it will actually take on a little bit of the smoke. It's giving a little bit of flavor without doing any of the curing or any stuff like that. When it comes to cold smoking, it's the environment inside and outside the smoking area. So when you've got something like a smoke generator, it's pumping smoke into whatever the chamber is. So that chamber could be a wine barrel or a wooden box, which is basically what most smoke houses are, or the side of a kettle grill or a pellet grill, whatever. For many years I used the pellet tube smoker as well, and I'll do some links to this sort of stuff if you're into looking at the gear. When it comes to the environment, you've got really, for cured meats, you're doing it over many hours. Something that people don't talk about much is the need for the humidity to be a bit higher. You want it to be like 70 or 60, 75%. So not full-blown humidity like it's raining, but you do want a little bit more moisture. Obviously the temperature is there, and the airflow. Airflow is really important as well. So that environment inside the chamber and around the chamber is really key. And when it comes to cold smoking, you've got the non-cured stuff I mentioned, like vegetables and steak and all that, but then the curing side of it. So I've done a ton of this with everything you can imagine, and meats, either farmed, good quality meat, or stuff that I've hunted. And the curing side of it can be done with precision. There'll be other videos about that in terms of equilibrium curing. I've got a calculator even on my blog, Eat Cured Meat, which gets like 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 people a month using it to work out how much cure, so they can control the salt, get it cured, and choose the level of seasoning or saltiness that they like. So that's generally like between 2% equilibrium cure up to 4 or 5% for some people. So I'll give you an example of like wet curing and dry curing, because I've got some stuff. Hold up, let me grab it. Now dry curing is a bit different. So this is like lardo, which is fat that's been dry curing, vacuum packed for three months. Guanciale, we're not cold smoking that. Guanciale, jowl of a pig, pork fat, which I'm going to make some sausage with. Now here, 1, 2. So here I have this is my dry cured, cold smoked bacon recipe. It gets cold smoked for about 6 hours, and yes, it's basically doing its thing right now, not quite there. And then this is a wet brined piece of bacon, which I'll be hot smoking indirectly at about 200 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius. So pork belly, done 2 different ways, but this is equilibrium brining and this is equilibrium curing. So I'm still choosing my level of salt, and it's about equalizing the level of salt internally and externally. Equipment, okay, so I've got another video on this, so I'm just going to touch over it briefly. So my main two ones are the pellet tube smoker, simple, cheap, can't control things as much, and you've got to be careful if you place it in the same area as well. And then the smoke generator, there's about 3 of them out there. They're all copying these guys. UFO smoker, yeah, it was alright, used it for many years, but this is the upgrade. And then there's the the Smoke Daddy, but the Smoke Daddy it doesn't burn very cleanly, and it's a bit rough on the whole side of it. And again, you're just pumping that smoke in. But you've got to remember, as I said, with cured meats, you're just drying it with the smoke around it. And the smoke carries antibacterial and antifungal properties. That's why it's been used for thousands and thousands of years. Talking about the easiest projects, I'd probably say good old cheese is quite simple, but anything that you don't need to cure and that you're just going to be putting some flavor in and learning about how your cold smoker works. I mean, you can imagine all the variations and complexities you can have with the different types of wood, and then how you go about even mixing wood as well. Like there's a New Zealand native tree called Pahutakawa, so it goes really well with fish. So I use sometimes a blend of Pahutakawa with pistachio nutshells, because my partner is a squirrel and she eats nuts, and then I got a heap of nutshells. What are you going to do? I'll tell you another tip as well, I haven't tried it, is drying out cobs of corn that you've eaten. And I've been told that in the early days of American settlers, they used cobs of corn to smoke their bacon. OMG. So we've worked through some aspects of the equipment and what have you. If you've got any questions about this cold smoking thing, feel free to put a comment on the video and I'll get back to it as soon as possible. So now just a bit of a breakdown about the process of cold smoking. I wrote quite a bit about this on the blog over the years, but just step by step to give you a bit of an idea. So the actual steps are basic, but I always say the devil is actually in the detail. First, number one, you want to fully salt cure the meat. This is not applicable for the non-meat type of flavoring we talked about earlier on, but the salt curing is either from a wet brining or a dry curing aspect, or the other option is to do the saturation approach where you fully coat it in salt. I've got other videos around equilibrium curing, so that's another subject. Number two, form a pellicle on the meat. So before you cold smoke cured meat, you want to actually form this kind of bound protein structure on the outside. And you can do this in the fridge, leaving it uncovered, or you can have a fan on the meat for a certain amount of time. For fish, it can only take like 15 or 20 minutes, but I'd like to give it like an hour or two. I have made the mistake as well of leaving it too long, like overnight, and that wasn't such a great outcome. Had a bit of a tough rubbery skin when I did go to smoke it. Number three, set up a reliable cold smoking device. So we've gone through some of the devices, but you want like something that's burning consistently as well, with a good amount of airflow through it. Number four, you actually do the cold smoking of the food. And I'll talk a bit more as well about the times roughly, and I'll put up a table that I've got of different things, meat, vegetables, spices, and the different times for smoking that as well. So then after you've done your monitoring and you know you've smoked it and you've got a good level of humidity as well, which always helps so that you don't drying it out on the outside too fast, put it in a container or wrap it up and actually refrigerate it. I often only do like a maximum of maybe 8 hours cold smoking in a day, often like 4 hours, and then I'll let it rest and permeate and put it in a container or what have you. This is especially important for things like cheese, because you'll get a lot more smoky flavor once you've let it rest for some time. Losing the amount of weight, and then it's getting to a point where you've got that full preservation and minimizing the breakdown of the bacteria as well. Now here is a table just going over generally like a approximate guideline that I use for cold smoking. If you're looking at, you see is at the top with the stuff that is dry cured or wet brined, cold smoking times, I say like 1 to 5 days, but in essence that could be 4 to maybe top 8 hours per day. Heavily smoked Central European styles like Speck, and they go pretty hard on the cold smoking with that. With vegetables or chocolate, all the experiences that I've had and I've learnt from generally showcase that an hour is kind of like a maximum thing, and then that other non-cured meat style that I've mentioned, fresh meat just for flavour, 1 to 3 hours, but you'd probably want to be doing that like a day beforehand if you wanted to trial that meat that's not wet on the outside, that has that pellicle aspect to it as well. So this channel is all about cold smoking, charcuterie, dry curing, so if you're interested there'll be a ton of more videos coming out. I've got a ebook as well on cold smoking, I'll link below, and if you really want to go crazy then I've got my dry curing online course. Thanks for watching.